Facebook, LinkedIn. All right. Hey, everybody. We are live. Path to Mastery podcast. Welcome. Today we have a special episode. I know. I think I say special episode every episode, but I just love negotiations. It's like one of my favorite things. Like if someone's like, David, why do I hire you? Like in the real estate world, I'm like, because I am an awesome negotiator and I'm going to get you more money. Or I'm going to get you what you need. So anyway, I love this conversation. So Mark, how's it going today, man?
It's going fantastic, but now I don't feel so special. I mean, if you say this to all your guests, come on, man. This is going to be a great show today. Maybe we should call it the most stupendous, amazing episode you've ever had.
Amen. Well, you know what? But I did follow it up with saying this really is special because of how much I love negotiations. So I think it's really, really critical to being awesome at sales. So appreciate you being here today, man.
Thanks for having me, dude.
Let me a quick bio for you. We're streaming on Clubhouse. We're streaming on LinkedIn. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. So anywhere, and then we'll be live on podcast on Apple Podcasts in the next couple of weeks. There's a link up top in Clubhouse Path to Mastery podcast on Apple. So please follow the podcast, and you can hear us live. And well, actually, you're hearing us live now, but you can hear yourself. And if you want to jump in, just raise your hands, and we're going to open it up for some questions in a little bit as well. So you guys are welcome to contribute and be involved in the podcast. All right. So Mark is. Let me pull up your bio here, Mark. Just so we can tell our listeners.
Don't make me sound more important than I actually am, man.
Well, I will. I'll do my best to not do that. Okay. But you're the founder and CEO of Negotiations Ninja, which it sounds awesome. World-class negotiation training tailored to your needs. Mark's an entrepreneur, sales and procurement veteran, podcast host, speaker, and recognized negotiations expert. Mark has led C-level negotiations for many years for a variety of companies and industries. He's now running his own negotiations training company. Mark utilizes his extensive speaking experience to deliver engaging, usable, and market-relevant training to underserved markets. Also the host of two incredible podcasts, the podcast, The Negotiations Ninja, and also the Content Call Out, which is the B2B content marketing. Mark, brother, what's up? Thanks for being here.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. We're going to have a great show today. I can already tell that it's going to be a great show today.
How can you tell, man? How can you tell?
It's your attitude, man. It's fantastic. I'm excited. You know, not a lot of hosts are like that. Some hosts come in and they're like, so today we're talking, and I'm like, it's going to be a rough show. It's going to be a rough show today.
Yeah, man. No, man, I bring it, bro. You know, we're doing it. We're teaching. I've been teaching a class the last couple of days on sales, and you know, one of the things that I think a lot of us don't talk enough about is when you're in sales, you want to be interesting. Like yes. You want people to be like, hey, I actually want to talk to this person. Like they've caught my like. I think Grant says it well, and Gary Vee says, if you want people to listen to your story, you have to get their attention first.
Yeah. Right. And you actually have to have an interesting story.
Yeah. That does help, right? Yeah. Otherwise, you're just crazy, right?
Yeah.
So, which I've been called, Mark, to be honest with you. Before,
that's okay. Me too. All the best people are crazy.
So listen, negotiations, man. Why? How did you get into negotiations? Why are we talking about negotiations today?
Look, negotiations is the single most transformational skill you can build in your toolbox. It delivers significant results for you almost immediately upon implementation. And a lot of people don't think about that. They think about, developing their sales skills, which is very, very important. Don't get me wrong. It's actually super critical. But a big part of that is ensuring that you not only get the deal, but you get a good deal. And a lot of people don't consider that. And when they think negotiation, oftentimes we conflate negotiation with a lot of anxiety that people feel, a lot of fear that comes with negotiation. And I'm here to say that it doesn't have to be that way. As long as you practice, as long as you learn, study, and practice, you're going to do fine and you're going to make a ton of money.
Well, I love making a ton of money, man. So that's, we're going to talk about practice in a minute because, I want to hear more when you talk about, like, when you say practice, like, what does that look like for people? if somebody really wants to get good at this, right? But
Yeah,
I want to talk first. I want to break down. The title is "Win-Win Negotiations Are a Myth." What do you mean by that?
it's a very controversial statement.
It's good. It catches
Yeah,
attention.
yeah. Look, the reason that I say that is because I feel like win-win negotiations really damage a lot of people when they go into it's a very misleading title for a style of negotiations because win-win negotiations presuppose that both parties can win.
Hmm.
And that's not true. That's just a lie. At the end of the day, one party is getting more value than the other party. That's a fact. It's going to happen. Now, does that mean that the other party loses? No, not necessarily. It just means that they get less value out of the negotiation. But if you come in with a win-win attitude and a win-win mindset, you become morally obligated to ensure that the other party gets a win.
Hmm.
And if you are morally obligated to ensure that the other party gets a win, then you have to be completely transparent with each other because there's no way to be able to determine that unless you're not. And if you are completely transparent with the other person, that means that you are trusting them at the same time to also be completely transparent with you, which they
Got it.
probably are not going to do.
All right.
Which means
So
that you're going to be releasing all of this information under the hope that they're going to be transparent with you. Very, very dangerous situation to put yourself in.
all right. So let me. I'm gonna give you some little resistance on this.
Do it.
This now,
Let's do it.
okay, because yeah, I think for some, just getting something done is a win, right? Like
Yep.
for some people, helping them just to maybe the other person. See, this is where I'm struggling because I feel like a lot of times just getting it done is the win for both parties.
What do
So
you
so
mean by that?
all right, so I'll use real estate as an example.
Right.
That's the example I've spent the last 20 years of my life in.
Sure.
There's a lot of times people get in their own like you. I'll help a seller to get a deal done. Maybe they're taking a little bit less than they want to, but because of them doing that, they're achieving their goals. So they're because they're getting emotional. Like I don't know about you, but I've seen people like shoot themselves in the foot out of emotion, and then they regret it down the road, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes, and I guess that's where I'm going. Maybe I'm, and I want you to make me wrong. Like
I mean,
if
it
I am
sounds like you're
wrong,
agreeing with me so far.
well, I'm agreeing with you, but I still think it's a win-win. I think if both parties get it done, it's a win.
Okay,
And,
so
and
let's this is what's very important. So let's classify what people want to they need and what they want out of the deal. This is
mm,
incredibly important because you're right. Most people, especially in real estate, go into the negotiation just kind of winging it, just hoping to see what they can get out of the deal. And that's a big mistake, right? They don't really know what they're looking for. They don't really know what they're trying to achieve. A big part of your job is to be able to help them determine what they need and want, right? And
yeah,
so
100%. And
when we
help
think
them. Yeah.
about that in that context, right, you probably have clients come to you and they say things like, "Well, I want to get a good deal." Well, what does that actually mean? What price do you want to sell or buy at? What terms do you want to be able to operate at? When do you want to move in? All those kinds of things are part of what makes up a good deal. Now, if the party has a range of acceptable outcomes, right? There's a range of prices that they can or cannot accept, or will not sell at, or there's terms that they will or will not accept, or there's a range, then that helps us to be able to determine what the good deal actually looks like. If you're saying to me getting them any deal is a win, then I would highly recommend that that's not the right way to approach it. But I know based on how you're talking, that's not what you mean. What you mean is let's first determine
I'm
what
helping
you need and
them.
want out of the deal, and then let's try and help you achieve those things.
I'm
Right?
helping them achieve the goal. Yeah.
Right,
So so
exactly.
so I remember when I first got licensed, and this is 20 years ago. November's 20 years. something somebody said to me. He said, if you learn and this may, yeah, he said, if you learn to make everybody feel like they got a fair deal, you're going to be really, really successful.
Yeah. Okay. So
Uh,
this is, and I'm going to push back a little bit here as well. This
all
is the
right,
problem
awesome.
that
I
I
love
have
it.
with people that believe in win-win overall
Mm,
is they say things like that. They say things like, "Well, I want you to feel like you've gotten a win." Okay, so it's not actually a win. You just want the person to feel like they've gotten a win, or you want the person to feel like they've gotten a fair deal. But what does fair
isn't
actually mean? Fair is not based on what your perspective is, or what the seller's perspective is, or even what the buyer's perspective is. It's different for each person. And in order for
mm,
it to be completely fair, all parties have to come together to be able to actually objectively determine what fair is. And that's never going to happen. This is why I
mm,
mean win-win is a myth. It's just we're making up words. I'll give you an example. I sell negotiation training for a living, right? So I was having a discussion with a person that I was selling negotiation training to, um, and they said, "Mark, can you get me a deal?" I said, "Well, help me to keep it interesting for me, right? Let me know what you can give me in order to give you a deal. I can give you a deal, but I won't unless you give me something in return." So she said, "Well, I mean, getting the deal for you is the win, so you should just give me a deal to get the win." I was like, "Whoa, you called me, right? Like, you want this more than I do. So in order for me to be interested in doing this deal with you, you have to offer me an incentive to give you a deal." And she said, "Well, that doesn't feel like a win-win for me." I was like, "Well, it's a win for you, it's not a win for me." See, so
mm.
people throw around these words, and they make them sound so amazing. And it sounds great. Win-win sounds great, but most people don't actually mean that. They don't actually mean that both parties, like, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
someone's getting more value.
Well, okay. I feel like I agree with you. I agree with you. So I'm not going to tell you I disagree with you. And I kind of still see it like is like my thought process is if somebody feels like they got to win, they got to win.
Sure.
Right. I mean,
Listen, you
because
could get a terrible deal and I'll make you feel like you've gotten a win all day. Fantastic.
so,
Congratulations. Well
well,
done, David.
yeah,
Well done.
I love it.
You really
L-
raked me over the coals on this one.
Ah,
My
come on, man.
goodness.
Listen. So here, here's just I've dealt with some people that are their own worst night enemy, and they sabotage themselves, and sometimes
Big
you just
time.
got to help them
Yes.
get to where they need to get. So you and I could probably go back, and I'm going to be on your podcast next week, and we can talk more about that. But
We're gonna have a
I do
ton of
want to
fun.
talk about I do want to talk about like negotiation and what would you say what makes somebody a really strong great negotiator, like a ninja, like you're a
They know what they need
negotiations
and
ninja.
they know what they
Okay.
want. And they're very clear about that before they go into the negotiation. And this is really, really important. So many of us, especially in the sales world, are very customer focused, right? We think about our customers' needs and wants, and that's super important. Don't get me wrong. I still want you to do that. But oftentimes we sacrifice our own needs and wants for the sake of the customer's needs and wants. And we end up
Mm,
making concessions that we shouldn't, because we haven't even thought through what we need and want in the negotiation. So all good negotiators know exactly what they need and want out of the negotiation before they even go into the deal. And they're clear on those things. So what prices, what terms, all those kinds of things we talked about, right? And then quite equally, they have forecasted what they think their customer needs and wants, or whomever they're negotiating with. Let's just even say it's a personal negotiation. They forecasted the counterparty's needs and wants, and then they go in and vet that. They ask good questions. They want to know, what does the counterparty need and want out of this, and hopefully in the process they make a deal that makes sense. That is the single most important thing to your planning and preparation. If you just do that, you're way ahead of your competition.
so would you create a list, Mark? Like would somebody like say here's
Absolutely.
ahead of
Yeah,
time?
look, I mean, many of us have aspirational goals, right? Like, so when we go into a deal, it's make more money or reduce risk or expand services or whatever it is, right? We have these aspirational goals. But most of us don't break that down into the independent list that makes up that thing. So if it's make more money, you know, is it an increase in prices? Is it a bunch more referrals? Is it cross-selling some other different products and services that you might have? It could be a number of different things that you do to increase the amount of money that you're going to get from that deal. Now, without that, you're kind of flying blind, right? Where you like make more money isn't really
Mm.
directional. It doesn't really give you a lot of options. But then next to those things, you also have a range of acceptable outcomes, right? You have a worst case scenario, right? What is the lowest price you could accept or the highest price that you'd be willing to go to, depending on what side of the table that you're sitting on? What is the target that you're trying to reach? What's your best case scenario? And there, that creates a range of acceptable outcomes for each of those things that you want to try and drive towards in your negotiation. If you can do that, you're way ahead, because most people are winging it. Most people don't know what they need and want. Most people are just going in to quote unquote make more money.
Yeah. So I am we're on Clubhouse, and so I've got some people up. I'm gonna let some people ask you a couple questions in a
Let's
couple
do it.
minutes. And also if you're on Clubhouse, make sure you're following the club. Also, there's my link up top. I'm doing a lot more on TikTok. It would mean the world to me if you would follow me on link top. I'll also put the link back for the podcast in a few minutes. I'm also going to make sure we give you Mark's information as well. You can check out his YouTube channel. He's got an awesome YouTube channel, and he's got a podcast himself. Mark, question before I open it up, and then I've got a couple more questions myself. What would you say is the biggest mistake that you see people make when it comes to negotiations?
Accepting things that the counterparty asks for and just giving them those things. Most people concede without asking for things in return. So let me give you an example. You ask me for something in a deal that you say, I'm selling you something. You say, Mark, can you reduce your prices? I say, sure, because I want to get the deal. But then I don't ask for something in return. So my concessions are one way to you. That means that I'm in a trade deficit situation. I'm losing money on that trade. I have to ask for something in return, and I always make my asking conditional, right? So I say to you, I can get you that thing if you can do whatever for me. And I've hopefully developed a list of things that I need and want from you in the process to be able to say, I need this from you in order to give you a discount. Much the same way that I gave you the example earlier. Many of us in sales are so afraid of losing the deal that we never actually ask for anything in return. We just say yes. And that's a very big mistake.
Yeah, interesting. Well, it's thinking about it, like even you and I being here today, where the person that does all your podcasting, they reached out to us, and I'm like, oh man, I'm not even taking episodes right now. And I sent her, if you want to buy an episode, you can do that, and blah blah blah. And she responded back, and she's like, well, hey, if interested, why not have Mark? You'll be on Mark's episode podcast. He'll be on your podcast.
There you
So
go.
then it got me thinking, okay, well, you know what? That sounds. I'll make more time for that. You know what I mean? So that's actually a good example of somebody who used negotiations to achieve something,
Yeah.
right? That
She
they
does a great
wanted.
job, Kay.
Yeah, absolutely. So, let me, any other mistakes besides that though? Is there a big one? Like if somebody's in it, like what about being in the negotiation? Like what are some of the mistakes people would make being in the actual negotiation?
Yeah, trying to speed up when you should be slowing down. People think that speed in negotiations is really, really important to try and it's counterintuitive, right? Because you want to get the deal done and you think that by speeding things up, you're going to get the deal done sooner. But the problem is that oftentimes you end up getting a deal that doesn't necessarily make sense because you've rushed through it and haven't thought through the implications of the decisions that you're making throughout the negotiation. Because negotiation and decision quality go hand in hand. They are part of the same formula. You cannot have good decisions without negotiations and vice versa. And when we rush our decisions and we're not thinking about our things very carefully, we end up getting deals that are suboptimal. We make less money, we have higher risk, all of those things become part of it. And many of our counterparties use that as an opportunity to pressure us into a deal. So they'll move quickly. They'll say things like, look, this is a fantastic deal. You can't pass this up. This deal is going to close on this date. If you haven't done this by this time, it's going to go. Most of the time, it's actually probably a good idea to let those things go if you cannot make a decision by then, because a deal that's made under pressure of time usually results in a suboptimal deal. And sometimes it results in a really bad situation where it actually costs you more to have done the deal than to not have done the deal at all. And I've been in many situations like that where I've come out on the end in the early part of my career going, what have I done? Now this is way more costly for me. It's not what I wanted. It takes a significant amount more effort, and then you just wait for the contract to be done or look for deals that where you can exit that at
Yeah.
any moment in time.
So here's what I'm thinking as I'm listening. I love the conversation, and being a salesperson, sales trainer, 40 years salesperson. In sales, you have to create urgency to be
Yes.
successful,
Yes.
right? So you agree with
Do you do
how
you create urgency, or do you identify the urgency and then just use that to your benefit?
well, you would I like that you said that. You would identify urgency, right? You would and help. I guess it could be the same thing, creating it but then you would use it not to my benefit, but to the benefit of the party that you're trying to help make a decision.
Does speeding up that help them make a better decision? Or does it just help you get the deal done faster?
Does speeding it up help them make it may help them make a decision, period, right? Where a lot of people are struggle with making decisions and they're indecisive.
Yeah. So
So
what you're talking about is using what I've said as an offensive tool rather than being very cautious of it as being defensive. So I think we're talking about the same thing from different sides of the spectrum. I'm saying be cautious about people who would use that to force you to make a decision faster, thus
mm,
reducing your decision quality. You're saying, hey, we can also use this as an offensive tool to help people make decisions faster by implementing time constraints into the deal. The answer to the both of those questions is absolutely. Yes, you
yeah,
can use it as an offensive tool, but also you need to be very cautious about it being used against you to make a decision that you shouldn't necessarily make.
yeah. I think you just have to know when to. Do you think patience is important in
Yeah,
negotiations? We have
yeah,
to.
absolutely. It's probably the single biggest thing that I struggled with over the course of my career is patience. I'm not a patient person. I'm very impatient. And I've had to force myself in multiple occasions to implement patience into the deal. In fact, there have been many situations where I've consciously forced myself to slow down the pace of the deal to ensure
Mm,
that I'm making the right decisions and thinking it through very carefully. Because everyone gets wrapped up in the emotion of the deal, some more than others, but everyone gets wrapped up in the emotion of the deal and it gets exciting and you want to close it. But that's when you're most vulnerable. When your emotions are wrapped up in the outcome that you foresee, you make big mistakes. So you've almost got to try and separate yourself from the emotion as much as you can or manage it as
yeah,
best you can by slowing down so you can make better quality decisions.
yeah, love it. The other thing I'm thinking about too is sometime. Well, I think it depends on the size of the right if of the deal and the impact of the deal, right? I mean, if you're buying if you're buying a private jet or something and you don't you don't really need that, that's probably going to have a lot more of an impact on you than if you're going to be signing up for $1,000 course and have reluctance about doing that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
um
And you've got to think, I mean, all of it comes into play, right? Your risk spectrum, your cost like all of it comes into play. And I think it's going to be different for every person that goes through it, but whatever you have to do to try and make better quality decisions, and for me and for a lot of people that means slowing things down
yeah,
so that you can think through it, that's very important.
yeah, I'm
We're
I'm
not going to
guessing.
all be like Grant and go and drop 50 mil on a brand new jet, and it's not going to make us,
Yeah,
we're just like, oh, no big deal, like whatever, right? That's not, most of us aren't in that
yeah.
position.
I'm
I,
not even sure why I said jet, to be honest with you. I must be
yeah,
thinking about. I'm like, should have. Yeah, I should have said.
I pray that all of us are in that kind of position one day.
Yes, yes, we shall be. All right. I want to see if does anybody on the clubhouse stage want to ask a question of Mark. If you do, just give me a mic flash, and I will call on you. And Looks like Mark, we may not have any question takers. Oh, I'm
All
sorry.
good.
Looks like
That just
Kelly.
means we're
Hold on.
having a great time.
We have Kelly Sanders here. Saunders, I'm sorry. And she's in automotive sales. So I love that. All right, Kelly, how's it going today? Let me make sure I give
Going
her
good.
a
How are you?
follow. I'm doing good, Kelly. I just gave you a follow as well. So
Hey,
yeah, we're
Kelly.
here
Thank
with
you.
Mark, and Mark is a negotiations
Hey.
expert.
Alrighty, I'm gonna go ahead and follow you back. There we go. So I was attracted to this conversation because of the title, Win-Win Negotiations Are Myths. So when I first started in retail automotive sales about a decade ago, my manager had said, it's not a good deal unless it's a lose-lose deal. If you're not happy and your customer is not necessarily like the happiest, like they didn't get every single thing that they came in and asked for, then that's how you know it's a good deal. I would love for you to give your thoughts and perspectives on maybe that lose-lose negotiations
Wow.
thought
I've
process.
never heard that.
I actually had a very similar manager once, Kelly, who said exactly the same thing. If you're not happy and I'm not happy, that means we've gotten a deal that makes sense. And I don't necessarily agree with that because and this is the problem that I also have with win-win is that so many people tie your emotional feeling to the negotiation. They say, well, if you feel good, therefore it's a good deal. Or if both of you feel bad, therefore it's a good or a bad deal. And that's the part that I have a particular problem with because what you have to really analyze is did I get what I need and wanted within the range of acceptable outcomes that I came in here to do? Right? Yes, I made some concessions here and there, but overall, did I get what I needed and wanted to make sure that I got the deal that made sense for me? And if the answer to that is yes, it doesn't matter how you feel. You could feel like shit, right? The other party may have made you feel like you were a bad person. This is the worst thing in the world. I can't believe you would do this because people use emotions to manipulate you to make the deal make more sense for them. People are going to do that. But my question to you is did you get a deal that fits with the needs and wants that you identified before you went in? If the answer to that is yes, then you've gotten a deal that makes sense for you. The other party, that's up to them. They're in it for them, right? If they've gotten a deal that makes sense for them, awesome, fantastic, congratulations, good for you. But so many of us attach our feelings to the outcome that it doesn't matter. We look back at the needs and wants that we have, and we might even feel gross about like the negotiation, like, oh, I don't feel good about this, right? I feel like the other person made me feel bad, and it's just a really bad. It feels gross. But then we look at our needs and wants, and we're like, but actually, I hit all of the things that I wanted to get out of it. So your feelings, I think, our feelings, we all do this. Our feelings sometimes mislead us. And sometimes we feel, this is the point that I was trying to make earlier with David, we feel even amazing, right? We feel amazing about the deal. We walk out, we're like, that was great. It was the best deal. Wow, I feel fantastic. And then we look at our list of things that we were supposed to get and we realize, oh, I didn't hit 7 out of 10 of these things. Oh dear, but I feel amazing. And so I just wanted everyone to be very cautious about attaching feelings to an outcome when we should be thinking about, did I achieve what I needed to achieve?
Yeah. Well, if you have your list ahead of time, then check the list, right, Mark?
That's right.
You go into it with these are the things I'm looking to walk away with, and maybe here's some things I'm willing to compromise on if I have to. And yeah, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
I agree with that 100%.
And
Hey,
David,
great
look,
question,
people are
Kelly.
manipulative, right? Like they're going to use emotions to figure out however they can use you and work you through the negotiation. So we've got to think about that too.
Yeah, great. Kelly, thank you for the question. Appreciate you. We get probably time one more question if we want. Armando or Jay, if either of you want to ask a question, I'll give you a couple seconds. Otherwise, I'm just going to jump back. All right, cool. All right, well, so Mark, I want to bring us back to where we started when you talked about practice. You said, we have to learn, I think you used the word practice. Is that the word you used? Because that's what I wrote down.
Practice.
Yeah. Talk to us about practice. How does somebody get practice and get better at this?
You have to make it a part of your life. Many of us in sales are negotiating on an ongoing basis daily, and that's fantastic. But you've got to make it, when I say practice, it's not just practice negotiating, but make it a practice. What do I mean by that? Like yoga is a practice. Martial arts is a practice. There
Mm.
is no perfect state. There is no perfection. It has to be something that you consistently work on an ongoing basis to improve all the time. And I would much rather see people make small incremental improvements than do like one course and then be done with it and just say, hey, I'm a negotiation expert. You're not. You have to use this as a part of your life. So read a ton of books, listen to a ton of audio, listen to this podcast, listen to tons of other shows that are out there about sales and negotiation. You're going to pick up things, but then don't just listen, implement.
Yeah.
Because I can't remember who said this, but they said knowledge is not power. It's the implementation of knowledge that is power. And that is true. So make it a part of your life, make it a part of your daily sales and negotiation practice.
Yeah, I have to agree with you 100% on that. Same thing with sales. I mean, we have to practice, and the more we do it, we just get better at it. And I'm guessing negotiations exactly the same.
Yeah.
And you get it, and there's probably no, like, there's no template. I'm imagining, like, you can't just show up and say, okay, here's like the exact blueprint. You have to be able to bob and weave. Is that accurate? Like,
Yeah, I
and
look, I think that there are strategies that you can use to be more prepared. There are strategies that you can use to have better tactics in your negotiations. There is a need for your ability to be fluid in the negotiation. Michael Wheeler, who's a professor out of Harvard, negotiation professor, likens the act of negotiating to jazz, right? The better musician you are, the better jazz musician you're going to be, right? If you can read sheet music very, very well, if you've performed in front of large audiences, you're going to be a better jazz musician because you can pick up and move and weave where you need to and play off of the other players. The same is true for negotiation. The better negotiation and more disciplined sales professional you are, the better negotiator you're going to be in the moment because you can now use that to your advantage in the situation. Yes, you're going to have to bob and weave, but I would say that comes with time and practice, right? And so you're going to learn what you can. And each industry is different, right? Auto is different to real estate, is different to B2B, is different to retail. Like it's all different in how you manage customers and how you manage the customer interaction. So the more experience you have in one particular industry, the better you're going to be at bobbing and weaving in that industry.
how, so besides, the obviously books and podcasts are great, but I like to use a metaphor, like you can watch Michael Phelps swim back and forth, and he could do a lesson for you and have a whiteboard at the side of the pool, but until you get in the pool and start swimming, you're never going to learn
That's
how to
right.
swim.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
how does somebody get in the pool for
Go
as a
take a
metaphor?
course. Go take a course, right? And don't just limit yourself to one course. We've got a number of courses. I know that Grant's got a number of courses. You've got a number of sales courses as well. Take a course. Learn how to negotiate. Don't limit yourself to one way of doing it. There's many negotiation and sales trainers that will say, this is the only way that you should do it. And that's a lie too. Please go and try a number of different ways to approach it and address it to make sure that you're learning as much as you can from a wide variety of different coaches because you're going to get something out of all of those experiences.
Yeah, great advice. Yeah, absolutely. And I think behavior also will play into it, right? Like, not just the person's behavior, but my behavior as to way. Is that also kind of
Yeah,
affect your ability, like, in a lot of ways, to negotiate?
I think so. I think the, Zen Buddhists have this saying called Shoshin, which means approach something with a beginner's mindset. So I feel like if you're approaching this discipline, this practice of negotiation with a beginner's mindset as much as you can, you're always going to learn something new. Where you're going to watch someone and go, hey, I can integrate what they're doing there in this completely unrelated field into what I'm doing over here
Yeah.
in my practice. And always trying to pick up little bits and pieces where you can start improving in what you're doing and test and test and test. Sometimes it's going to work. Sometimes it's not going to work. Sometimes you're going to bomb, and that's okay. That's part of how you get better, because there can be no improvement without failure. So make sure that you account for that, and it's going to happen. It's not a fun thing when it happens, but remember to keep going.
You have to, it has to happen in order to grow, right? You can't, if you're
right.
not expanding, you can't grow. I love too what you said about the different industry, because we were talking about this morning. Ironically, is, somebody had said, I was telling them about an event that's happening with all general salespeople coming together, and they're like, "Well, I really want to focus on the real estate events." I'm like, "Well, sometimes it's good to get in those other rooms because you get different perspective, right? Like you can hear something from somebody else in a different industry that you'll incorporate into real estate that'll make you a better real estate agent."
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Go
So,
sit in on industry events and other industry events. It's very, very important.
so Mark, what's the best way for our listeners to get in touch with you?
Easiest way to get me is on LinkedIn. You can connect with me just by typing in my name, Mark Raffan, or go to my website, negotiations.ninja. Would love to connect with you. It would be great.
All right, awesome. Well, listen, I appreciate your time. I'm looking
Likewise.
forward
Thank you
to
very much for
being
having me.
100%. I'm looking forward to being on your show as well. And final question, man, what does path to mastery mean to you?
Path to mastery means to me identifying what is the best, not necessarily the easiest, but the best possible path to ensuring that you become a master at a particular discipline. And that's exactly what you're doing. And that's exactly what you preach. And I love it.
I love your answer. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Awesome. Awesome. Awesome.